Today, our guest is former NBA and as well coach Lionel Hollins. And coach, are you happy with the yesterday game, Lakers against Wizards?
Well, they're just exhibition games, and we didn't play everybody, but we're happy that the group that we put out there played well, shot the ball extremely well, and we were able to get the win. We have a lot of work to do. Today we had a good work day, and we'll work tomorrow, and then we start on with the Clippers, and we'll keep building from there. We have 8 games. They call them seeding games to finish the regular season, and we will try to put in a lot of work in both the games and practice to get better.
Mm-hmm. I'm really happy to see Dion Waiters or J.R. Smith again in the NBA, because many times there are some kind of situations which are lost for memes and social media, for example, like with the GR, but it's not so good for the player. And I'm really happy that J.R. Smith got another chance, and now is with you, and he shows that he still got something that he's ready for the NBA.
Well, it's unfortunate that both of those guys have had situations where they didn't flourish for whatever reason. But we're happy with both of those guys, and they've been, what we've expected of them. JR makes threes, and Dion is a good offensive player that can put the ball on the floor and go get a shot for himself. And, we're excited for the prospects in the future.
Mm-hmm. I would like to start our interview with your part of your career as a player. And before NBA, in 1974, you had a serious moped crash, and you had problems with 2 fingers, left pinky and right finger. Did it change your game style, or did you need to change anything?
Well, let me set the record straight. I've never been on a moped, and I never had a moped accident. I actually hurt my finger in the NBA in 1981. I think it was 80 or 81, playing with the Philadelphia 76ers. That's when I first hurt my pinky. And then the other finger, just a series of dislocations that, took place. But yes, obviously, being my left hand, I've had to make some adjustments. But it slowed me down a little bit when the ball was in my left hand. But I adjusted by pushing the ball with my right hand, and it was an issue. But as my career went on, I had issues with knees and feet and ankles and elbows. I mean, it's just the price you pay to play in the NBA. So, that's, just the way it is. And I wouldn't trade it. Maybe I'd been smarter when I gotten hurt to set out more games and maybe get my finger repaired. But I'm fine with how it happened.
It's really good, because it's not the first time when I asked the question about some episode from the career. And first time I asked Craig Hodges about how did he, which from the teams he played in the Europe was the best time for him, because I found information in the internet that were 3 teams, and he told me, no, man, there's only 1 team. So it's good to know that some information from the internet don't have to be correct. And
Sure.
In 1975, Blazers picked you the 6th pick in the NBA draft. Did you expect to be the Blazers, or it was a surprise for you?
Well, it was a surprise. I wasn't expecting to go to Portland. I had heard rumors about Phoenix and Philadelphia, and both of those teams took one took a high school guy, Daryl Dawkins, Philly did, and Alvin Adams came out of school a year early, and he also came and played for his college coach, John McLeod. So those 2 teams wound up being out, and I wound up going to Portland, which turned out to be one of the blessings of my career, and the fact that I got to play with Bill Walton, who was such a great player, and also contribute to playing for a championship.
Mm-hmm. And you were young and really talented team. In the draft with you, also Portland Trail Blazers selected Bob Gross, and there were also Sidney Weeks and Jeff Petrie. What were expectations from Blazers for the time?
Well, I think when they drafted me, they expected me to come in and start. Unfortunately, I had an appendectomy during the preseason, and I missed the first 7 or 8 games of the regular season. But when I came back, I eventually got in the groove, and by the end of the year, I played well enough to be on the all-rookie team. So I think their expectations were just to come in and contribute and be what they thought I could be in terms of running a ball club, pushing the ball, scoring and defending. I mean, Bobby Gross and myself were the only 2 rookies on that team. And, Jeff Petrie was a great player. Sidney Wicks was a great player. Bill Walton, who was also on that team, had been hurt most of the year. So didn't play with him. And I played with him off and on, but the consistent playing with him wasn't until toward the end of the year. And we had a, great finish with a lot of young players, and we got time. And then the next year, the team made some changes. I think we brought in 8 new players the following year. So things really changed. The culture changed. We brought in a new coach in Jack Ramsey. Lenny Wilkins gave me a lot of freedom to play, and that gave me a lot of confidence and maturity to be able to play the way I played the second year I was in the league.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, in your first rookie season, Len Wilkins was the head coach in the Blazers, and in your sophomore season appeared Jack Ramsey. And what was the main difference for you? You mentioned that Lenny Wilkins give you a lot of freedom. What about Jack Ramsey?
Well, they both were great coaches. Both of them are Hall of Fame coaches. They're just different. Nothing was, where one was better or did something more for me. I think they both allowed me to play. I think the system that we played in and the players that we added the second year went to more how I was able to play in college. We pressured defensively. We were a good defensive team. We ran, and that was really my game. And I think that when I came in the first year with Lenny, we had Jeff Petrie and we had Sidney Wicks, who were 2 stars. And so my ability to create and do more was limited simply because of the people that were ahead of me and the stars on the team. But the next year, things changed a little bit, and we had a great system. I always tell people we were probably the perfect fit as group for Jack's system, and his system was a perfect fit for us.
Mm-hmm. And your second season in Portland Trail Blazers were really, really successful because you got better results in regular season. There was 49-33. And in the first round, you won with Chicago Bulls and their role player Artin Gilmore. And it was 2-1. In the second round, you won with Denver Nuggets with the duo David Thompson and Dan Issel. And which team was more difficult for you in the playoffs?
Well, the style of play of the Chicago Bulls was very difficult for us because they were very physical. They didn't like to run. They wanted to slow it down and bang it inside to Artis Gilmore and play that way. And they had gone, I think, post AllStar Game, I think they were 24-4. They had an unbelievable second half of the season to actually get into the playoffs, but we still had home court advantage. And it was a difficult series from the fact that it was a 3-game series. So you lose at home, you could be out. So we had to struggle the first game, and we won. We went there, it was a close game, and we lost. And we came back home, another close game, and we were able to close them out at the end with a couple of plays that broke their back and a big turnover by them at the end. So they were very tough. But Denver was different, with David Thompson, and they like to deny all over the court and run the fast break. And they had Bobby Jones and Paul Silas, and to go along with David Thompson. And they were just a formidable opponent, but their style, we played their style better than they did. We both played similar, but we were better at doing it than them because we could really run. And we won the first game in Denver, and we had a chance to win the second game. We went in overtime, and then when we came home, we won 2 games and went up there and lost. And we came back home. It was a shorter series, 4-2. But it was a series that was tougher than the 4-2 standing showed. But our brand of play was just superior to theirs, and that was the difference. When you go and you look at the Lakers, the Lakers actually had the best record in the league that year, and they had beaten us 4 or 5 times during the regular season, and I think we won the last game of the regular season against them. And they didn't need the game, and they didn't play everybody, so that wasn't something to write home about. But we were really rolling, and we had so much confidence, and our pressure defense forced LA to not be able to get the ball up the court and get the ball to Kareem, who I think still averaged 30 points plus a game, but it could have been 40 if we were letting them move freely. And we went down to LA and we jumped on them the first game. We played a superior game and won the first game. And then the second game was a real battle, and we wound up winning by 2. And it was 4-0, but it was never easy because except for the first game where we never trailed, we were down in the fourth quarter of every one of those games, even the last 2 when we came back home to sweep the series. And they were a very formidable opponent. And we were just fortunate to be playing at the top of our game and our defensive pressure. And they also had Lucius Allen had broken his toe, and Washington had gotten hurt. Their power forward had torn his ACL during the season, so they weren't at full strength. But it was still a great series, and we were fortunate to sweep them and go on to the finals. And when you get to the finals, we were excited and we were young. We wound up being the youngest team, still the youngest team in NBA history to win a championship. When you think about the whole group, and then if you take about the starting lineup, and then the starting lineup in the finals, or from the LA series on, with Johnny Davis, who was a rookie. Bobby Gross and myself were both in our second year, and Luke and Bill were in their third year. And so we are 21 years old, 23, 24. And it was, I always argue that it's not the age of the players, it's the maturity and it's the talent and how they have the ability to either play together and play to win, or they're learning that. If you take 4 or 5 years to learn that, you're going to be 27, 28 years old. So we were very good passing team. We're a very good moving team, very good defensive team. We had high IQ. We had great competitiveness, toughness. So we had all that it took to win a series. And after we got over the jitters, the first 2 games in Philadelphia, people will probably think this is a misspeak, but we had, I think, 30 and 32 turnovers in the first 2 games, but we averaged 20 turnovers a game. So the league was different than it is now, where if you average 15, 16 turnovers, that's too many. But we wound up getting our poise back coming home. And the fight was a big thing as well, because, they were beating us. Not that the games were runaway games, but they were beating us pretty handy. And then the fight broke out between Daryl Dawkins and Maurice Lucas. And that kind of changed our mentality. It sort of shook us to the point of waking us up and saying, we're in the NBA Finals and we can compete with these guys, and we need to stop being nervous and stop thinking that we can't win. And I remember Jack Ramsey's words to us before the third game. He says, we have to go out and play our game. He said, they haven't taken our game away. We've taken our game away. We need to, as I just said, get more poised and play our game and not change anything. And we did. We wound up winning both games handily at home. And then we went back to Philly and handily beat them in Philly. And we were on our way to a handily 6th game, but it didn't work out as we started making turnovers, and we missed some free throws and missed some easy bunnies. that would have put the game away, and they wound up, taking us to the wire, and we won on a missed shot by George McGinnis right just before the buzzer. So we were world champions, and obviously we thought that we were young and there were going to be many opportunities. Unfortunately, there weren't. We started the next season 50 wins in our first 60 games, and we were one of the premier teams that in the history of the NBA at that point. But unfortunately, injuries got in the way, and we fell by the wayside. And by 1980, after winning the championship in '77, I think by 1980, maybe '82, all the players from that group were gone, whether they retired or were traded. So that was the NBA then. I don't think that would happen now. They would keep everybody and try to ride the wave.
Mm-hmm. And the next season, after the season when you won the NBA Finals, you got your ring, you were selected to AllStar Game. And how is it to play in this game, and what does it mean to you?
Well, it's a great honor to be with the greatest players, in the world, and then to be selected to play in the AllStar Game. And the AllStar Game is a great game, but when I look at it, I probably should have been in the AllStar Game the year before when we won the championship, and I should have been in the AllStar Game the next year. But I don't think there's so many great players, and there's always people left out that should be in. It's that way now. You hear people talk about snub. It's not really a snub. It's just there's so many players, and it's hard to pick who should be in the AllStar Game and who shouldn't be in the AllStar Game. I'm just fortunate that I was in one as a player. I've been in 3 as a coach. So it's about being fortunate, and so I have 4 AllStar rings, and I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of the opportunities I had. And because when you go, you're with the best of the best. And even this year, being with the AllStar Game in Chicago and going and being around all those players and being such a great game in a different format, that I was proud to be a part of that. So anytime you can be honored, it's a blessing. And again, I thought that I was going to be in more, but I wasn't. And I thought I was going to win more championships, but I didn't. So it's just the way it goes.
You were also twice in AllDefensive Team, one in the first, and the second selection was the second NBA team. What did help you to be such successful in this aspect?
Well, when I was in college at Arizona State, we played full court pressure defense, and we learned how to help and rotate and play passing lanes and play it for 40 minutes. And so when I came into the NBA, my first year, we didn't actually play that way. We were a decent offensive team, but we weren't a high level defensive team. And then when Jack Ramsey took over, we picked up full court. We jump switch. We did all kinds of things that disrupted the offense of the opponent. So that, as I said, that style fit my game perfectly, and I was able to elevate. And again, being on the all-defensive team was a great honor. I think as time moved on, the guys with the most steals usually were on the all-star team, but I think there are other guys that don't get a lot of steals, but they're guarding the top guy, don't get as much recognition because the stats have taken precedent over who's really playing defense, because getting steals a lot of times is just gambling, and you get 2 steals a game and you give up 2 layups or 3 layups a game because you gamble, negates the 2 steals that you got. But I'm happy about it. I mean, any honor you get, and when you get singled out with the best, to say, oh yeah, I was all pro, all defense 2 years. Wow. That's a great honor, and it's on my legacy. It's not the most important thing, and it's not the biggest accomplishments that I had, but it's nice to know that I contributed in winning from that aspect as well.
Mm-hmm. You spent also 2 seasons in Philadelphia 76ers, and how it was to play with Dr. J.
Well, I was there two and a half years. I got traded in February, and we wound up going to the finals. And I was kind of the final piece to help them go to the finals. And Dr. J is, he's moving down the list as all-time greats, but he is one of the all-time greats that played in the NBA. And I think the reason he's moving down is because there's so many great younger players, and the young fans don't know Dr. J, and they don't know some of the other great players. But Doc, he was one of those that these young players that are running and dunking are walking on his shoulders because he showed the way. And everybody after him kept leading the way to what we have now in the NBA. But it started with guys like Dr. J and Dominic Wilkins and Connie Hawkins and Elgin Baylor, the people that don't get much notoriety anymore, but were legends and still are legends. Just, playing with somebody of that note sometimes can be uneasy because you start watching and not performing. And I always say that I wasn't bought to Philly to watch Dr. J bring a championship, but to go help Dr. J win a championship. And it's the same way now when you go play with LeBron and you go play with any of the other great players that have been in the league, Shaq and Kobe and, so on and so forth. And then, LeBron now, players have to understand they have to come and they have to put in time and put in work to help win. It's not just LeBron. It's not just a great player. And I learned that while I was there. And we went to 2 NBA finals. We went to 3 Eastern Conference finals. And we won a lot of games. We just didn't win a championship. But I'm proud of the time I was in Philadelphia. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to have played with Julius. And I just ran into him this year down in Florida. And it was good to see him. And, we don't talk all the time, but we acknowledge that. But we acknowledge that, we have a bond and we're friends and brothers.
Mm-hmm. 1985 was your last season in the NBA as a player. You played in Houston Rockets with the young, talented front court, Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon, and then decided to start your career as a coach. First, it was you were assistant coach in Arizona State. And could you tell me when did appear this idea to be a coach after your player career?
Well, I had different coaches tell me that they thought I should go into coaching. In fact, Chuck Daly had said to me when I played for him in Detroit that, he would put me on my staff if I was ready to retire, but I wasn't ready to retire. I'd had injuries and I didn't want to end it in that manner, so I came back and played one more year in Houston. And I'd like to just say that one of my comments after playing in Houston, I said, I wish that I was younger so that I could play with Olajuwon in the prime of his career, because he was just scratching the surface that first year, and I was a part of it, and I saw greatness written all over him, and I saw dominance written all over him. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to play with him, because when I look back at my career, I played, I said with Jeff Petrie and Sidney Wicks and Maurice Lucas and Bill Walton, who are all great players. I consider myself just a good player that contributed to winning. And then I go to Philly, I play with Bobby Jones and Dr. J and Daryl Dawkins and Mo Cheeks. Mo Cheeks is in the Hall of Fame, and nobody expected that of him when he came out of college. But so I play with those guys, and I go to San Diego, which is the LA Clippers now, and I play with Terry Cummings and Tom Chambers and Randy Smith. You talk about great players, Swin Nader. And I also reconnected with Bill Walton again in San Diego. And then I go to Detroit and I play with Bill Laimbeer, and I play with Vinnie Johnson and Isaiah Thomas, and then go to Houston and play with Ralph Sampson, and I play with Olajuwon, two more great players in the league. And then as a coach, had the opportunity, to coach Charles Barkley, now coaching LeBron James, but also, coach Tom Chambers later on in his career, and Kevin Johnson and Dan Marley and Danny Ainge. I mean, all these players that I had the good fortune to be a part of. And I go back and look at my career, I was a part of a lot of winning in the NBA. When I was in Phoenix for those 7 years, we averaged 53 wins a year. And, we went to the NBA finals the one year. We went to Western Conference finals. So I've been blessed to be able to be a part of great players and to have a lot of success from a win-loss perspective, and to create a lot of relationships. But going to Arizona State, I didn't quit playing to coach. I quit playing. I was really banged up and not able to continue at that time. And so I went to get my degree. I went back to Arizona State to go back to school. And while I was there, they asked me to come and help out with the basketball program. So I helped out 1 year, and then I left and tried to do some other stuff, and I couldn't really get a job. And so I came back and volunteered another year at Arizona State. So I volunteered 2 years at Arizona State, and then the Suns called. And then I was ingrained. It's part of my DNA, I believe. The game comes easy to me. The understanding of the X's and O's and the motivation and being able to encourage and inspire young people and to make a difference in their lives is just part of who I am as a person. And I thank God for that. And that there was something that I could do that would take those gifts and be translated into a job, and to be paid to do something that I love to do, and that really came naturally.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned about being assistant coach in Phoenix Suns. How do you remember the NBA Finals against MJ and Chicago Bulls?
Well, I got a chance to relive it again with Last Dance. We felt like we were as good. We had a great season. I think we won 62, 63 games, something like that. Charles was the MVP. We stumbled our way into the finals early on. We played the Lakers, and the Lakers had us down 2-0, and we had to go back to Los Angeles. And, we beat them twice there. And that's when the series were 3 out of 5. And we came back home and played an overtime game, and almost were eliminated by a Byron Scott three-pointer from the angle, the same angle that Paxson hit his three that won the 6th game in the finals. So we went through that and then had another tough series with Seattle in the Western Conference Finals. We also had to play San Antonio and David Robinson. So, it was a fight to get to the finals, and we wound up losing one of our players. He broke his foot, and it hurt us tremendously. Took away a little bit of our depth, but also the style, the way we play. And we get to the finals, and we can't win at home. It's sort of like the way we started the playoffs. We lose the first 2 games to the Bulls, then we go out to Chicago and we win 2 out of 3, and very nearly won the 3rd game. And then we come back home, and what happens? We can't win again. We were up by 8 or 9 points, and Michael Jordan went on one of those tears where I think he scored 9 of the 12 points that they scored in the 4th quarter. It was that kind of battle, and then Paxson hit the 3 to win the game. So we had a great year. We accomplished a lot. We got to the finals. We had a historic game in that 3 overtime game in Chicago that we won, which for the history of the Suns, it erased a 3 overtime loss to the Celtics the last time they had been to the finals. So we reversed that, but we couldn't reverse the defeat and we lost to a great team and great players, and Michael and Scotty and Horace Grant and Paxson and B.J. Armstrong. I mean, that was a dynasty team, and so nothing to be ashamed about. We went as far as we could, and we just couldn't get over the hump. But it was a great memory.
How it was to be a coach to charismatic, talkative, and also great talent like Charles Barkley was?
Say that one more time.
How do you remember cooperation with Charles Barkley? Because he was charismatic for sure, talkative, and really great talent.
Well, great player. And Charles was a great personality. And, my relationship with Charles was great. A relationship that Paul Westphal had with Charles was, I think that people on the outside don't get to see the real person like coaches do. We're on the buses, we're on the planes, we're at practice. It's a little bit different viewpoint for us. And, Charles was never a problem for anybody. And he was a good leader. He took ownership of, mistakes, and when he played poorly, and he took ownership of stuff that didn't happen, where the media could be on one of his teammates and he would take the weight, or tell them to get off of him and blame him. I still have a great relationship with Charles. I see him when I go down and do NBA TV, and he's still a good friend. He calls me from time to time. It always surprises me with a call and see how I'm doing. So it's I enjoyed having the opportunity to work with him.
Mm-hmm. As I remember, I really loved his passion and what he did on the court. And when I realized that he got less than 2 meters, and he grabbed so many rebounds. And I remember also one block to the poor Richardson that he ran through the whole court with the passion, energy. It was really amazing. That's why Charles Barkley was really, really one of this greatest player in the 90s for sure. And
no question about it.
And in 1995, you start your long journey with. Then it was Vancouver Grizzlies and later Memphis Grizzlies. I remember that Blue Edwards told me about his first season in the Vancouver, that it was really tough because it was new reality. It was completely new roster, no too much team chemistry. And how do you remember this first season? Was it really tough, or you just look at this that is the first step to build something greater?
Well, it was tough, but you do have to look at it from the process of building something. None of those players were a part of winning. Those I think Stromile Swift came later at the end of the Vancouver era, but none of the rest of those players played on Memphis when they eventually started winning. And that's usually the way, expansion is. You're taking players that are older or young players that haven't really proven themselves, but teams have given up on. And they have other players that they didn't want to lose, so they expose the ones that they let go. So we had a mismatch of players, Blue Edwards and Byron Scott. It's just crazy when you think about some of the players that we had, and then we drafted Big Country. And I think we won 14 or 15 games the first year. And then the next year we won either 13 or 14 games. So we were stuck in a rut. And then I think we won 18 games. And, so it was a lot of losing, and it wasn't what I was used to. And, back then, expansion teams thought that with the young players, if they develop them, draft them, develop them, then you become a good team. But the rules of not being able to have the number 1 pick and having less than full salary cap really restricted a team from going from nothing to something real quick. And that was what the burden that was on Toronto and on the Memphis Grizzlies when they came into the league. Fortunately for Toronto, they had some players that they got that turned out to be really good, and they wound up trading some players to get more draft picks that, they had, when you think about Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady and Mighty Mouse, I mean, come on, they had some good players up there, and Marcus Camby was there, and, so their run and the run of the Vancouver Grizzlies were, they weren't even on the same page, on the same path. But it was interesting. I learned a lot about, what to look for in players, because, having had great players all along, you don't know sometimes with how to deal with players that are lesser, and how to motivate them, and how to encourage them, and how to get them, because not every player that has lesser talent, has that desire. There are some, and the league is full of guys around the league that it's not about talent with them, it's about their desire and will to be in the league and their work ethic. But when you have a whole team of young guys and guys that have been cast off, everybody has their own agenda. And that's very difficult to work with. They're thinking, okay, I'm coming to Vancouver and I'm gonna average 20 points a game, and I'll get a long-term contract, and I'll be famous, from that perspective. But we had some good young players eventually. Country had a decent career. Injuries restricted him, and physically he wasn't as gifted, from a speed and quickness perspective, but from a size and ability to score, he was right there with a lot of players in the league. Sharif was another guy that came along that was a great scorer and had, statistically a great career. I think he only made 1 or 2 playoff teams in his career, which, hurts you from a notoriety perspective, because winning is a big part of, being known as a player. Then we got Mike Bibby and Mike Dickerson, Othello Harrington. We started bringing in some young guys that really sparked. We had a chance to trade our pick for Steve Nash and didn't do it. We drafted Steve Francis and he demanded a trade, and we traded him to Houston. So, all kinds of things happened. And then the ownership changed. I think there was 3 owners. And finally, the 3rd owner took the team to Memphis. And I didn't go to Memphis initially. I went to the minor leagues after I was interim coach. My last year there, I wasn't asked back, and I couldn't get a job. So I take that back. I could get a job. I had an opportunity to go to San Antonio and work with Pop. Unfortunately for me, I was loyal. And when I say unfortunately, because you see how many coaches that Pop has put in from assistant to head, and you also see all the championships they won. But I was being me, and I was loyal to the organization in the minor leagues that I had already signed a contract with. And they wound up folding in the middle of the year. So my loyalty wasn't rewarded at that point. But, I'm happy with the decision I made. I'm still good friends with Pop, and I admire and respect him. So when I came to Memphis, I was there for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And then they fired the head coach, and everybody got fired. And they brought in another coach, and I was out. I wasn't in the minor leagues. I was out, and then I went to Milwaukee, and then came back again to Memphis as the head coach. So I was interim coach twice, and I was head coach, eventually permanent head coach, and we had some good success while I was there, and then I was fired from the job. Contract ran out, and it wasn't renewed, and then I set out for a minute, and then I went to Brooklyn. Then I was sitting out again after Brooklyn. People ask me what happened in Brooklyn. Well, we had an aging team, and each year they were getting worse, and we still made the playoffs our first year. And then the next year, most of those guys were gone, and we had quite a few young guys who wound up not being talented enough to be in the NBA. In fact, I think there's one or two that are still in the NBA from that squad. And you don't win, you don't stay. And sometimes when you win, you don't stay. So it's at the whim of the people who pay your salary and what they're looking for and how they view you as a person, as a coach, as a leader, as a developer of young players. And because they have their own view of those same players that you have. And so if they think more highly of them, they're going to have higher expectations of you and how you deal with them and how you have success with them. But, I was out for 3 years after that, and I get a call, and I'm assistant coach with the Lakers now, and with another great player. In fact, with two great players in AD and LeBron James. And, we have some players like Rondo who won a championship and has had a great career. And then some young players that are coming on the scene like KCP, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, and also Kyle Kuzma and Alex Caruso. So it's just my whole professional life and career has been blessed as well as my personal life. So I have no complaints, and I'm happy to be with the Lakers now.
You went really smoothly for all of my last questions. I guess that I need to skip 4 or 5 questions, and it was really great resume of your coaching career. Last question, I will ask about the Lakers in the bubble. Or the expectation you are in top 3 of teams which could potentially win the NBA Finals. What would be the most difficult to win the NBA Finals in this year?
Well, if you're talking teams, there's quite a few good teams, and we are in the West, and we have the Clippers, the Nuggets, OKC, Houston. Memphis is a young team that you have to be ready for. It's going to be tough. I mean, winning a championship is difficult. People don't realize that. They look at your roster and people that they like, and they look at the stats. But the win is very difficult. It takes a lot of personal sacrifice, team sacrifice, a lot of dedication and focus and discipline and togetherness. And because you go through so much. I mean, think about us as the Lakers this year. We've gone through a lot, starting with the Kobe Bryant death. And then we're playing really well after the AllStar Game. We're peaking for the playoffs, and all of a sudden season suspended. And then when the season comes back, we have, guys that aren't participating. We have to go out and get new guys. And so, we kind of changed our team in the middle of the stream, and we're trying to put together the chemistry again, which, we're happy with where we are, but we know we need work and need to go further to build our chemistry, to build our game back to what it was. And, but, to be in the bubble is something that's very difficult, takes a little bit more mental toughness, takes a little bit more personal discipline. And the beauty of it is it's all basketball. Everybody's down there just to play basketball. You're practicing, you're playing. There's no travel. There's no going home. There's no, there's no normal life. It's just basketball life. So, if you can put all the other things out of your mind and just look at it from that perspective, it's a pretty positive experience and could be very positive. And I'd say the team that's going to win, obviously injuries always plays a part, but also the team that's mentally tough, the team that's able to come together as a group and focus on one thing, because that's all there is that you need to focus on or can focus on. But, and not worry about what's going on outside the bubble, and worry about, can I leave? Or can I bring my family in? And all, just go down there, and it is what it is, and it's where it is. And I think the NBA has done a fabulous job of setting up the bubble and planning for a lot of eventualities. You know, obviously you can't plan for everyone, and obviously you can't say it's 100% safe. But I think that every player and every team that's down there, all the coaches, and I think they're all comfortable with where everything is. And I think you got to commend Adam Silver and his staff and the medical staff that were all involved in helping to set up the protocols that are in place. And hopefully it'll go better and we'll be able to complete the season.
Coach, thank you very much for time you give to this interview for OPOstories from the NBA. It was really a pleasure to talk about your career as a coach and the player, and also give some review from the bubble. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and hope that you will be satisfied with at the end of this bubble season with what Lakers will gain.
That would be nice. Thank you for having me, and you take care of yourself.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.